Black Hollow, Pennsylvania. A place where the sun's rays seem to struggle to penetrate the thick veil of mist that perpetually hangs over the town. The air is heavy with an eerie stillness, as if time itself has chosen to move more slowly here. A town shrouded in an almost tangible darkness. The fog wraps around the trees and buildings like a ghostly shroud, muffling sounds and creating an atmosphere of perpetual twilight. It clung to the woods, to the hills, even in the midday sun. The locals whispered tales of strange occurrences and eerie sightings, stories passed down through generations, each more chilling than the last. They spoke of Grayson Manor, a place that once stood as a symbol of wealth and power, now reduced to a shadow of its former self, a once grand estate now crumbling under the weight of secrets. Its walls, once pristine and white, now cracked and stained with the passage of time. Its windows, like vacant eyes, stared out at the town, eyes that had seen too much, that held the weight of countless untold stories. The manor stood at the edge of town, on a hill overlooking a valley, a silent sentinel, watching over Black Hollow with a gaze that seemed both protective and foreboding. It was a testament to a forgotten era, an era when the town thrived, and the manor was the heart of its prosperity, an era of grandeur and prosperity. But those days were long gone, leaving behind only echoes of what once was. Now, it was a shell, a hollow reminder of the past, standing in stark contrast to the vibrant life it once contained. Its facade cracked and overgrown with ivy, nature reclaiming what was once taken, slowly but surely. The iron gates, rusted and twisted, seemed to hold back something sinister, as if they were the last line of defense against the darkness that lurked within. The wind howled through the valley, carrying with it the whispers of the past, whispers of laughter, whispers of screams, whispers that seemed to come from the very soul of the town, whispers that sent chills down the spines of those who dared to listen, whispers that hinted at the dark secrets buried deep within Black Hollow. Black Hollow held its breath, it always had, as if waiting for something or someone to break the silence, waiting for the day those whispers would become screams again. A day that the town both feared and anticipated, knowing that the darkness of Black Hollow was far from over. The Graysons were once the lifeblood of Black Hollow. John Grayson, the patriarch, had built the town from the ground up. His fortune built on coal and timber. His wife Eleanor, a pillar of grace and charity. They had 2 children, Thomas the eldest and Emily the youngest. Then, one cold November night, they vanished, without a trace. The townsfolk searched for days. No sign of struggle, no sign of forced entry, no sign at all. The manor was as silent as a tomb. Some whispered of a family curse, others of a jealous rival. The truth, however, remained buried within the walls of Grayson Manor, a secret as dark and cold as the November night they disappeared. Years passed. The manor stood untouched, a monument to the town's collective grief and unspoken fear. The whispers continued, the secrets remained, and Grayson Manor waited. 3 friends, drawn by the allure of the unknown, decided to confront the legend of Grayson Manor. The manor had stood for centuries, shrouded in mystery and whispered tales of ghostly apparitions. It was said that no one who entered ever came out the same. Emma, the pragmatic one, sought truth. She had always been fascinated by the paranormal, but she approached it with a scientific mind. She believed that every legend had a kernel of truth waiting to be uncovered. Jake, the skeptic, sought to debunk the myths. He was convinced that the stories were nothing more than the product of overactive imaginations and local folklore. His goal was to prove that there was nothing to fear. Ryan, the thrill-seeker, sought adventure. For him, the manor was a playground of excitement and danger. He relished the adrenaline rush that came with exploring the unknown. They came armed with cameras and microphones, determined to capture any evidence of the supernatural. They had spent weeks preparing for this night, gathering the best equipment they could afford. Their mission to document the truth behind the haunting. They hoped to either validate the legends or lay them to rest once and for all. The old house creaked and groaned as they entered. The sound echoed through the empty halls, a reminder of the building's age and the many secrets it held. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that pierced the boarded-up windows. The air was thick with the smell of decay, a testament to the years of neglect. The air was thick with the smell of decay. The walls, once vibrant with life, now stood as a decaying testament to the passage of time. A sense of dread settled over them. It was as if the house itself was aware of their presence, watching their every move. They started with the main hall. Its once grand staircase now creaked ominously with every step, a haunting reminder of the grandeur that had long since faded. Its once grand staircase now creaked ominously with every step. Each creak seemed to echo the footsteps of those who had walked there before. Cobwebs clung to the portraits of strangers. The faces in the paintings seemed to watch them, their eyes following the group as they moved. Their eyes seemed to follow the group as they moved. It was as if the house was alive, aware of their intrusion. Each room seemed to whisper a story of forgotten lives, of shattered dreams, of unspeakable horrors that had taken place within these walls. A story of forgotten lives, of shattered dreams, of unspeakable horrors. The deeper they delved into the manor, the more they felt the weight of its history pressing down on them. As they delved deeper into the manor, the feeling of unease intensified. They were not alone. The manor held its breath, waiting to reveal its darkest secrets. In a dusty attic room tucked away in a forgotten corner, they found a journal, its leather cover brittle, its pages yellowed with age. It belonged to Emily Grayson. Her neat script detailed the family's last days in the manor. Emily wrote of strange occurrences, shadows moving in the night, whispers echoing through the halls. Her once playful tone grew increasingly frantic. Fear seeped from the pages. One entry in particular chilled them to the bone. Emily described a feeling of being watched, of cold whispers brushing against her ear at night. "They are here," she wrote. "They are in the walls." The journal ended abruptly. The final page ripped out. The mystery deepened. What had become of Emily and her family? What secrets did the manor hold within its walls? Determined to make contact, they set up a Ouija board in the old drawing room. The room was ice cold, the air thick with anticipation. They placed their fingers lightly on the planchette. "Is anyone here?" Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper. The planchette remained still. Silence hung heavy in the air. Then slowly, it began to move. It darted across the board, stopping on each letter with eerie precision. Grayson, it spelled out. Terror tightened its grip on them. The planchette continued to move. It spelled out a single word: beware. As if on cue, the candles flickered and died. The room plunged into darkness. A cold wind swept through the house, slamming doors and rattling windows. Panic surged through them. They were trapped. Section 6. Eerie evidence. They scrambled out of the darkness, their hearts pounding in their chests. Fumbling through the dark, they found their way out of the manor and into the relative safety of the night. They huddled together, catching their breath, their faces pale in the moonlight. Back at their makeshift base camp, they reviewed the footage. What they saw sent shivers down their spines. In the background, a shadowy figure flitted across the hallway. A cold, disembodied whisper seemed to emanate from the speakers. "Get out!" Despite the terror that gripped them, a strange sense of determination took hold. They had captured evidence of the supernatural. They had to uncover the truth. Section 7. Behind the walls. They returned to the manor the next day, armed with tools and a newfound resolve. They focused their attention on the wall where Emily's room had been, the wall that seemed to call to them. Hours of backbreaking work yielded results. A section of the wall crumbled, revealing a dark and narrow space behind it, a hidden chamber, and within it, a gruesome discovery. Human bones lay scattered on the cold earth, small bones belonging to a child, Emily. The air grew heavy with the stench of death. A wave of nausea washed over them. They had stumbled upon a crime scene, a tragedy hidden for decades. Section 8. The Final Sacrifice. This is the story of a haunting that transcended time, a tale of love, loss, and the ultimate sacrifice. The police arrived, their faces grim as they surveyed the scene. The manor stood silent, its dark windows like eyes watching their every move. The investigation began, but for Emma, the mystery remained. She felt an inexplicable connection to the manor, as if it was calling out to her. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfinished. The air around the manor was thick with secrets whispering to her in the dead of night. That Emily's story wasn't over. The journal she found hinted at a past filled with sorrow and a love that defied death. One night, driven by an unseen force, she returned to the manor. The fog was thick and the air was cold, but she felt a strange warmth guiding her steps. She stood in the empty room, Emily's journal clutched in her hand. The walls seemed to close in and the shadows danced around her. The whispers seemed louder now, swirling around her, beckoning her. She understood. The manor was alive and it demanded a sacrifice. Emily wasn't the villain in this story. She was a prisoner, a soul trapped by a malevolent force that thrived on despair, and the entity that haunted these walls wouldn't rest until it had claimed another soul. The air grew colder, and the shadows deepened. "I'll take her place," Emma whispered into the darkness. "Let her go. Take me instead." Her voice trembled, but her resolve was unshakable. The air crackled with energy. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart by her words. The whispers seemed to hush, replaced by a chilling silence. The room held its breath, waiting for the entity's response. Then a voice, cold and ancient, echoed through the room. It was a voice that carried the weight of centuries. A soul for a soul. The words hung in the air, sealing Emma's fate. She knew what she had to do, and she was ready to make the final sacrifice. Section 9. A New Voice in the Darkness. The manor stood silent once more. The police never found Emma. They attributed her disappearance to the same unknown fate that befell the Graysons. The town of Black Hollow breathed a collective sigh of relief. The whispers had stopped. Or so they thought. Months later, a young boy wandered too close to the manor. He swore he heard a voice, faint and sweet, calling from the broken window of Emily's old room. "Help me," it whispered. It was no longer Emily's voice. It was Emma's. The curse lived on, fueled by a new soul, a new voice to whisper its secrets, and the town of Black Hollow continued to hold its breath, forever trapped in the shadow of Grayson Manor.